a little bit about Cheryl. She's the co-founder of Cheryl Cosmeticals, a company that provides solutions for every skincare concern, especially curated for the Indian skin. It is used by skincare professionals across India. In addition to the usual responsibilities as an entrepreneur, her core strengths are finance, supply chain management, and setting up systems to improve efficiency. In 2013, the company became the first and only Indian company to be acquired by L'Oreal. She currently serves as the director of Take Charge Mentorship, a leadership program that strives to prepare Catholic youth for the real world challenges and motivates them to pursue their passion. She's also a mentor with the program. She's the mother of two wonderful daughters, loves gardening and painting with watercolors. Cheryl will talk about her entrepreneurial journey.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I hope that my sharing my story will help empower some of you to change what you do in your lives. I think all of you must have gone through, I'm a rebel. I love challenges. I think all of you must have gone through a time in your life when someone must have told you, you can't do this. And my answer has always been, I'll show you. This has been my answer to all of life's challenges. And it has become the rocket fuel for my journey. It first started with my father, who wanted his firstborn to be a son. And he did not come to visit me because I was a girl. I spent my life proving to him that I was more than a son. Later, when I finished my graduation, and a family acquaintance said, why don't you become a secretary? Nothing wrong with being a secretary, but in those days, all Catholic girls were secretaries because of our ability to speak and write good English. I didn't want to be pigeonholed. Instead, I opted to work with my father at his pharmaceutical company, Warden Pharma, and I worked as a production chemist. Incidentally, Warren Pharma was acquired by Indoco Remedies, a larger pharmaceutical company, but that's another story for another time. I worked here for 10 years, and I learned the ropes of running a business. I worked here hoping that I would make a significant change or to have a significant role in this company as it grew. But my father and his colleagues didn't believe that a girl could run a business or a factory. I was pretty frustrated. But at this point of time, I received life-changing advice from my boss. He told me that trees that grow under the old oak tree never grow taller than the oak tree. They always stay under the oak tree. And if something happens to the old oak tree, they cannot weather the sun, the wind, and the storms. And he said, move out from under the oak tree. After I got this advice, I decided to, and being so frustrated, I decided to start my own business. While I was at Warren, my boss, Mr. Bhandarkar, he believed in me. Under his tutelage, I learned how to make creams and lotions, shaving cream, and I was soon making it for my friends and family. Soon this became a business for me, and I was supplying the products to salons. While I was doing this business, I realized that if I wanted to grow or start a bigger business, I would need seed capital. I started saving my money, my salary, and I invested in IPOs. I was very lucky because my 500 rupee investments have sometimes given a return of 18,000 rupees a few years later. My then boyfriend, now husband, had gone to Canada for a holiday. And he presented me with an innovative product, which was a nail polish remover. It was something where you just dipped your fingers in and swirled it, and the nail polish came off. uh, he showed it to me and asked me whether I could make it. And he said, if you can make it in a month, we have a business. And I made it in a month. And within that time, we were already testing the prototype for its efficacy, for its number of uses, and for little details like, leaving nail polish on the skin. A friend of mine saw the container, our prototype, and said, this looks like a Hinka dabba. And it upset us. Okay, everybody's baby is perfect. But we realized that there was some value to what she said. And we re-looked at and changed the whole look. So here I learned that it was important to always learn and listen to feedback that I received, and especially from a customer. We had another friend of ours help us with our marketing and marketing strategy and our product launch. We had to find innovative ways of selling because we didn't have very large budgets for advertising. And what we did was every friend and relative of ours received a box of Nail Magic to sell. This helped us, reach more customers. I spent many evenings and weekends demonstrating and selling my product at retail and chemist stores. One evening, I was really embarrassed when a factory worker for my father's factory saw me and said, "Ithe kya karte? What are you doing here?" And I cried that night, but I realized that if I had to be an entrepreneur like I wanted to be, I would have to be willing to do anything and everything that was required by the business, by the company. I also realized that while selling the product and explaining the product at these counters, I could see the customer, and I knew when I had lost a customer or when I had gained a customer. And I think this experience held me in good stead for a very, very long time, because you learn what it is to sell and you learn how your customer reacts and you understand that. And this is a skill that I think all entrepreneurs should learn. We got our name from having focus groups. From our focus groups, we chose the name Cheryl's because it was an international sounding name and it would give us a better entry into the market. After we had started our business, we needed funds. So with our seed capital and loans from family, we went to the bank. The bank manager was a visionary, but the evaluation of the project went to his assistant. And he said, "I'm sorry, but I think that this is not a viable proposition because you are Catholics. And Catholics are not known for their business acumen. Challenge again, I'll show you." I remember that being a small organization, we had to do everything ourselves, right from the manufacturing and packing and filling and things like that. I remember the thrill of writing that first invoice and packing the goods into that tempo and riding with it to the distributor. Our product was a standalone product. And we realized that having only one product was not enough, and we needed to have a range of products. So we had to have line extension. Here we had a product, we introduced a product that was called Manicare. We got this name by going to a focus group at a management institute. Manicare was a nail polish thinner. I don't know if you remember or you know that when you use a nail polish, you can only use about half of that bottle. And most women don't want to throw out that other half. So this product helped in prolonging the life of the nail polish. And it was a very innovative product. After that, we had a lot of other products. Now, being small and being strapped for cash, we had to find innovative ways of doing things. To enter a market, you need to have something that is new, innovative, first of its kind. So when we at the leaders at that point of time were Lakme, and they had a product called shampoo plus conditioner. I don't know how many of you remember that, but all of them were shampoo and conditioner, where we developed a conditioner that was called Protein Plus, and it had great advantages over the shampoo plus conditioner, being only a conditioner and giving you better value. We used to take part in a lot of exhibitions. And after a couple of exhibitions, I realized that there was a particular flow, a pattern to the people walking into the exhibition. And I realized that if I wanted to have the best spot, I had to turn right, and then my stall would be on the left, because that's where the eye naturally went. And we always had our stall out there. And people would be drawn straight to our stall. And here we would have a lot of activity. We would have demonstrations, we would have things going on, and they would all crowd around our stall to see what was happening. And we didn't have money for bags. So what would happen was they would buy the product and they would go walking around the exhibition with the products in their hand. This was literally like a free advertisement for our products, because people would be asking, where did you get this? What is this? And things like that. And they'd come back to our stall to, find out what this was. We had a product called a cucumber mint peel-off mask. How did we reel our customers in? How did we get them interested in finding out what this product was? We always ask this question: why do women age faster than men? Can any of you tell me? Most of the answers would be women have more tension, women have babies, and things like this. And they would be really excited, or rather excited to know that they had a product which would give them the same benefit. What happens is that when a man shaves, he exfoliates the dead cells on his skin, and his skin glows. With our peel-off mask, you could apply the peel-off mask, and when you removed the peel-off mask, you were exfoliating the dead skin. And here was an opportunity for women to do this. They loved the product. Okay. Some very often, standing on your feet the whole day, your feet would be screaming for, rest. And there would be another customer, and you had to stand there smiling and explaining and talking to them about the product. Every single customer was important. And we gathered our customers one by one. We needed to now, since we didn't have any more funds to have more advertisements, we needed to find another way to reach our customers. We decided to meet the women's organizations. We had a talk called How to Make You Look More Beautiful. And which woman doesn't want to know how to make herself more beautiful? They loved it. We were invited to Rotary clubs, to Lioness meetings, to kitty parties, to the secretarial colleges, Mahila Mandals, and all the other groups that had women. And you could see them charging for the product. They were, literally would want to grab the product from at the time when we set it out for sale. We would speak in English, Hindi, Marathi, and it was helpful for us because we got each customer and we collected all the data and things like that. Soon, L'Oreal came in and they launched a conditioner. And then came Lakme with their peel-off masks. We were too small with no budget and no wherewithal to fight these giants. We had to do something about this. In one of our talks, we had spoken to a group of beauty salon owners. Here we realized that there were no products for the beauty salon owners to use. There was only one thick gooey cream which they had to use for their massage. And this was not good for all skins. It would give them a problem with oily skins. This gave us, we had found a niche, a need that nobody was catering to. And we moved and shifted from retail to B2B, that was direct to our customer. We were always okay with evolving, shape shifting, shifting direction till we found failure was not an option for us. We had to keep changing and finding the route that finally gave us results. And this was why we were able to move from retail to B2B. A business, once you start a business, it creates a life of its own. It needs to be fed, it needs to be nurtured, it needs to be taken care of. Once the wheels of the business start moving, you can't say, okay, I'll work only 9 to 5. Today I'm tired, not now. So this doesn't happen. If you don't accept the business that is coming to you, it will go to someone else. So you have to be very active. A business doesn't know you're getting married. It doesn't know you're having a baby. It doesn't know that someone is dying. It doesn't know any of that. It needs to be taken care of. Let me tell you about the day I went into labor. I went into labor in the morning, and I was still printing on a slow dot matrix printer the addresses of the salon owners in Bombay, because we needed to invite them for our seminar, which was in less than a month. And even while I was in the hospital, I was sitting and cutting and pasting the addresses there, because I knew it had to go out, and the seminar was within a month, and these letters had to go out. Here at the seminar, I had to leave Sherry, my daughter, in a room upstairs with a colleague's maid. But this was our commitment to our business. We didn't hold back. Every single customer of ours was valuable. We made sure that we answered every single call, even if I was nursing my baby, and sometimes a kind customer would say, take care of your baby, you can call us later. One early morning, my mother died of a long fight with cancer. And we had the funeral the same day. We had the seminar the next day, and we had to have that seminar. The show had to go on. It was hard for me. I had no time to grieve, but everything was arranged and everything was organized, and we had to go on. So sometimes the business demanded a lot of sacrifices. Some of them were really difficult, like this one. But I don't know. I don't think there was anything we could do about that. But at least I had my husband, Oscar, to, support me. And we were in this time of grieving. And we've been like the two sides of a coin. Both of us have complementary skills, but in some ways we are sometimes diametrically opposite. We do have the same values of, hard work, curiosity, the commitment to the business and to our family. And we made this work because we had implicit trust in each other. And we knew that if the other was taking the decision, they had already thought about it and, all the issues involved before taking the decision. Most times we would be talking in the morning over our cup of tea or coffee, like Oscar had his coffee and I'd have my tea and the newspaper. We discussed most things then. And once it was discussed and it was decided as to what had to be done, then there was no going back, and both of us had, agreed, and it would be according to what we had. We both took on different areas of the business. Oscar was on the outside, and I handled the inside. When I say outside, I mean client facing, like the customers, new products, developing the new products, researching the new products, and everything that was outside facing, most, talking to people and things like that. Whereas I took care of production, operations, finance, and all the other things that were left over. Like Steve Jobs says, nothing you've learned is ever lost. Everything that we both of us brought all our skills into play. Him with his ability to keep the crowds spellbound and falling in love with him and our brand, and me with my ability to see patterns in numbers and trying to set up systems that made things easy and simple. What also helped me was having a good support system. I had a great I had a maid who came in when my daughter Kara was a year, and she just loved my kids. And I think I need to thank her for being able to have done what I've done, because I knew that she was there to take care of my kids. And I knew she watched them like a hawk, saw that they were fed, saw that they went to school, and I could leave the house, travel all over the country, travel internationally, because I knew she was there to take care of them. Often, I mean, once I remember my daughter Kara saying, "Mama, don't go." And I told her, "Sweetheart, you can't say that, because I don't want to go. I want to be here with you, but I have to go. And this is for us and our family." And she didn't ask me again. I mean, she didn't say it again. And these were the things that we had to do to build. There are choices that we make, and there are things we do that sacrifices that we make for our family. We all realize that it was for the family and for all of us. We realized our business was seasonal because there were no parties or weddings held during the rainy season. So we had to find an alternate source of business. Now, we started a training school, we started a clinic, and here this helped us to tide over those days when we didn't have much sale. Also helped us, the clinic also helped us because it became a crucible for our products. We use this, we had our clients and we were able to work on our products so that we could tweak the results and say that we got the right ones that we wanted. We were always moving the needle bit by bit towards getting a better product, better systems, better products, and everything. Both of us are science graduates, and we found that the accounting jargon was very difficult for us, but we used our innate common sense to understand these things. Often there would be times when if money was the bankers would tell us, "What are you doing? Why are you using short-term capital for long-term uses or long-term capital for short-term uses?" For us, it was just one pot of money available, and we used it. But if ever something like this was told to us, then we realized that we were making a mistake, and we made sure that this didn't happen again. Like the time when we got charged a fine for paying our sales tax late. We created a calendar for taxes and made sure that it didn't happen. I always believe that life has a way of, giving us a tap on the shoulder to say, "Hey, don't do this, correct yourself." And if you don't learn the lesson, then it keeps coming to you again and again until you have learned it. And the tap gets stronger and stronger till it's a kick in your butt. So it's better to handle it the first time the issue comes up. And that's what we did. Very often when decisions had to be made, if they were risky decisions, the conservative voice and the accounting voice in my head would say, "Risky, not to be done." But the optimistic entrepreneur within me said, "Here's the opportunity. This is what you can do." Very often when we took a decision like this, which was risky, and we knew that both of us had discussed it and decided, We could just hold each other's hand and take that leap. It was very important for me to stay calm in a crisis. I realized that if I didn't stay calm in a crisis, and I showed even the slightest amount of worry or fear, the whole morale and everybody would go into a panic. So however scared I was, I had to stay calm, because that was the only way I would find a solution and answer to my problems or my issues. When we started, we didn't have too much money, like I've been saying again and again. We took on people, staff members, without too much experience, and we trained them. We found that just because they didn't have those fancy degrees didn't mean they didn't have innate intelligence. And some of them trained and grew to take on levels of managerial posts and things like that. And they stayed with us right up to our transition into L'Oreal, and they moved on into L'Oreal. This made me really happy. I was happy that at the end of the thing, when I look back, I found that 70-80% of my staff were all women. It didn't start out intentionally, but it happened. And I found that I was happy to have given them that financial freedom, that ability to prove themselves that they may not have got otherwise, and a safe space to work. Or they were very happy to be also, to create that financial freedom for themselves. Often I gave them separate checks sometimes, so that they could deposit one small check in their own account, because the other check had to be handed over to their mother-in-law or husband or whatever. And many of them have called me years later to thank me for having, forced them to create that little nest egg of theirs, because it helped them at situations and times when they needed, and they didn't have anywhere else to go. I was always learning, attending seminars, reading. This was a continuous thing for both of us. And I found that every time we attended a seminar, even if we learned one thing and we could bring one idea back to our business, we would be implementing that and it would grow. I remember a time when, towards the end, when I would travel to meet our distributors and our key customers, I would travel by flight. The best part of it was the ability to go to those bookshops and pick up books. I would devour those books during my journey, and on my return, I would have a whole list of things that we could, integrate into our systems to improve it. Our customer care, all our systems got upgraded every time I read a book. I found that as I grew, my business grew. I feel that investing in yourself is investing in your own business. And I think that's something that every entrepreneur should. By this time, we were at a slightly more comfortable place. And we had our clinic and our training center and our product line. We had a fire in our factory, but because of the revenues coming in from the clinic and the training school, we were able to manage and go over that rough patch. But and we just bought our house with the normal bank loans, and we were wondering which stream of business we should focus on. Now, this wasn't a decision that we could take on our own. We needed to we got in a consultant. They studied the 3 areas, and they told us finally that we needed to focus on the product brand, the range. Now here and it was difficult for us to, decide to let go of the training school and the clinic. We let go of the training school, but not the clinic, because the clinic was our crucible and we needed that. And but we didn't focus on that. Once we decided that the product brand was the important one, we did an exercise that helped us understand our brand vision, who exactly was our customer, what exactly did she need, how could we help her. And then here we had been, getting customers, or, bringing in customers into our bucket or our space. And then they were all different kinds of customers. There were some customers who wanted results, and there were some customers who just wanted business. And we realized that the customers who wanted business just wanted the clients to keep coming over in. The customers who wanted results knew that if they used our products, they would be able to use our products and the home care. They would be able to give their clients results, and with word of mouth, their client base would grow. And their client, realizing that they had given them results, would continue coming to them. And this was what we chose to focus on. It was around this time that I was 49 and evaluating where I had reached, what I had done. I looked out into the world to see what other women had done. And I saw Indira Gandhi was a prime minister at 50. Margaret Thatcher was a prime minister at 50. And where was Cheryl? She hadn't reached anywhere. And at that point of time, a consultant of ours told me about a program that was being held. That was a Tony Robbins program, which was called Unleash the Power Within. And I joined that. That helped me tremendously. It helped me remove all those limiting beliefs I had. It changed the way I thought. It changed a lot about the way we did things. And I think here then I worked with more focus and more direction than I had done before. Here we started then setting goals for our people, huge, big goals. We didn't reach those goals, but we grew at 150% year on year. And that was huge. I started, visualization. I made a vision board. And on that vision board, I had not traveled till then. I had not traveled out of the country till then. And I had put all these pictures of what I wanted on that. A few months of having created that vision board, there were so many of those things that came to pass. And I realized that this was a great tool for me to start growing things. And I would start visualizing or putting things on my vision board so that it helped me grow faster. Because this is now when I got what I wanted. I put the effort. It's not that you didn't have to put the effort, but at least it gave you a direction, and it gave you a way to do things. We also realized that people say, okay, what's your turnover? And a lot of people ask, okay, what's your turnover? And they think, oh, wow, my turnover is so much. My turnover is this and the other. I realized that turnover or top line is vanity, but it's bottom line that's more important, and that is sanity. That keeps you sane and responsible. Since we were just the two of us, and we didn't have to answer to anybody else in terms of what we did and how we handled things, we made sure that we made decisions that did not hurt the brand. For short-term goals, people, destroy the long-term brand. Things like selling, putting that pressure of targets and things like that. And then they go and sell it in the wholesale and destroy the brand because they brought the brand value down. This is something that we didn't need to do. We could keep the brand strong and focused. Failure was never an option for us. We it just meant that it had to be tweaked. Maybe it was not the right time for that particular thing, or not the right space, whatever. We had needed to tweak it till we found the right way of getting it done. I remember when sachets first came into the market. When sachets first came into the market, I thought that was a great idea of putting together a kit. And since we didn't have too much money then, we had put the sachets in simple foil packs, and we had put labels on it. But because the foil was not of the right quality, the products dried out in those sachets. We relaunched the same idea 5 or 6 years later. And we became the first in the industry to do that. Today, it's the norm. Everywhere they're using sachets for treatments. We had put them together like step 1, step 2, 3, 4, 5, and made it simple and easy for even the salon owner's assistant to be able to do a treatment without missing out a step. And so when you have a good idea, you should keep track of those good ideas. It can be used maybe sometime later. We had names like Dantuff. One of our products' names was Dantuff. That was tough on dandruff. We had names like Sensi Moist. That is moisturizers for sensitive skin. We had a name like Dermashade, which was a sunscreen for the skin. So again, here we did a lot of work in finding our names and working on that. I found a product menu in some product I had bought. And then I thought this was a good idea. So we started making product menus. I sat and wrote the copy for this and really worked on it to tell the customer exactly what they were getting. And we had so many unusual products that maybe if they just read it, they would love to buy it. We had a distributor who was always complaining about our delivery systems. And it was only when we accepted, that him as our guide to improving, that we worked on our delivery systems. And I do remember him calling me to tell me that ours was the best delivery system. And even despite the fact that he was dealing with MNCs. So if you do take cognizance of what your customer is saying, you can improve your systems to get it better. Welcoming criticism shows you exactly where you can grow. Everything we saw, every idea, everything we saw was always, how can I use this in my business? Where can it help me improve things? We would read books on other businesses, read about other entrepreneurs' journeys. And this went on so that we could really, perfect our product or bring it to the level that it was. I remember when I was in Lucknow, and a distributor was receiving his consignment from Lakme. And I saw that the products were packed in a cellophane wrap. And it helped, because when you have them in a cellophane wrap, you don't need corrugated boxes and its partitions, and it reduces the amount of time that you spend on the packaging and the weight of the freight. So that helped to reduce, every little place that we could reduce a few pennies or a little money would be contributing towards our bottom line. I always wondered as to what exactly we had done, or what was the impact of our business, and what were we doing with this business. I remember that in the early days when we had started our seminars and we were in Indore, we were running late. I was standing at the window and I saw a line of scooters, all the husbands waiting with their helmets on the handle and the keys in their hand, waiting for their wives. but they didn't budge until the seminar was over. And a few years down the line, I think more towards the end, I had again attended another seminar in Indore, and I saw a line of chauffeur-driven cars waiting for the salon owners. This is the impact that, you know, we had on their businesses. I think in the beginning it was just Oscar and me, and then slowly it became the kids and the staff and my factory and the sales staff, the trainers, the distributors, the suppliers, the customers and their clients. So it really did impact everybody. And having kept this afloat through these years impacted so many other lives. By now, we were a company with 150 products, a staff of 500, 10,000 customers, loyalty programs, and a pan-India distribution. Our trainers were traveling to different states. We were now the experts in this niche of effective skincare for Indian skins. And we addressed all the skincare concerns of Indian skins. We were creating waves in the market. And we started, we were able to go travel abroad to other exhibitions and to see what was happening in our industry across the world. Here we heard many people talking about how they were growing their business to get to a level where they could be acquired by L'Oreal or Estee Lauder. And we wondered how and why they could think of something like this. This was not something that we ever thought about or ever considered. But now the market was getting bigger. We had created a market where there was none. The big boys were now looking into this niche and were interested. Soon we had the PE companies coming, PE firms knocking on our doors. But we wanted to stay in control of what happened in our business, and therefore we decided that was not for us. That was not our route. Soon, then there were multinationals and large FMCGs wooing us. Then came L'Oreal knocking at the door. And it was a matter of great pride for us that the people, L'Oreal, every time L'Oreal did something new, we'd say, oh, wow, if L'Oreal can do it, we can do it. They may have 4,000 research chemists, but we will still make a product as good as theirs. Their system, okay, they give their distributors 8%, we will give 10%. If they did something, we would try and do it better. So it was really heartening to see that they had decided that we were a strategic fit for them, because they were the leaders in hair care. We were the leaders in skincare. They had tried to create that market, but were not successful. And then they thought that, okay, this is what they would like to do and get a foothold into skincare. They wanted that foothold into skincare. We never thought about this. But when L'Oreal came along, we re-looked at the situation. We didn't want to force our children into our business. They may or may not like it. They may or may not enjoy it. They were too young to decide at that time. They were in school. And it wasn't fair for us to force it down their throat. Plus, if we sold, it would provide us with the ability to provide different opportunities for them. And therefore, we did decide to sell. It was also the fact that they were a global brand and they had a vision that was as lofty as ours. This is what I have to say, and I hope there is something you can take away from this. Thank you.
We have Rudolph who asks, did you make good sales from the Mahila meetings at Rotary clubs? How was the follow-up sales made?
The sales from these Mahila mandals and the Rotary clubs and all were fantastic, because we took down everybody's name and number. We gave them on the package, we made sure that they had our number, and they would call us for repeat buys.
Okay. Samuel is asking, how did you innovate on products? How did you create products which were large brands missed out?
We were listening to the customer. Our ear was to the ground. The larger product companies didn't have that kind of connect with the customer. We would all. My husband was always talking to the estheticians, the beauticians, the customers in our clinic. We had our customer care team who would bring us the feedback, and we were always adding to and innovating our products.
Interesting. I had posted one, the transition from B2C to B2B, and how did your distributors cope to that? Probably the time frame.
No, we had to change our distributors from the B2C to B2B. Those distributors changed.
Oh, okay. So that would have been a big gap during that.
Yes, there was.
Oh, okay, great. Lena Rego asks, how did you prepare your business plan when you started?
I didn't have a business plan. I found somebody's plan and I copied it and I tried to work out some figures. I didn't understand anything. But when I really found a book years later on how to write your business plan, I sat down then and wrote it. And that was when I understood what I was doing. In the beginning, I didn't know anything about it.
Excellent. Luis Miranda asks, how did you and Oscar continue learning on the job? Management techniques, packaging, innovation, etc.
Reading from other people's journeys. It was business, other businesses, other entrepreneurs, and watching and observing what others did.
Samantha De Silva, at what time did you think of bringing in professional management to oversee the operations?
At a time after we moved from the mom and pop stage, where we decided to, okay, whether it was the product brand or the clinic or the training school, from there, when we made that transition, that is when we brought in professional people.
And what's the average, so this is Brian writing, what's the average teething time period for a business to take off and bring profits? Is there an age limit to become an entrepreneur? He's got 3 questions. Would you look at taking on a new entrepreneurial challenge today?
My husband is willing to. I'm not sure. If I find something really interesting, maybe I will.
Oh, great.
Whether there is an age limit, right? He asked, there is no age limit to becoming an entrepreneur. And what was his third question?
The first one was, what was the average teething time period for the business to take off?
There is no such average teething time. But the Gujaratis have a saying that for 1,000 days, you don't count, look for profit or break even, or profit at least.
All right. Luis Miranda asks another one. Can you talk about the challenges, if any, about being a business partner with your husband, especially with trying to separate home and office as an entrepreneur?
That was a tough one because what happened in the office sometimes came home. But we would sit down and talk about our challenges and talk about how to make our decisions. And once we decided on those, then that was it.
Ian asks, when you were struggling for funds, did you ever consider the IPO?
No, we didn't.
Oh.
We weren't big enough for the IPO. It was towards the end, maybe, but we didn't want to get into that.
Charlotte asks, could you throw some idea on initial investments, actual values, expansion cost, etc.? And what was your drawing board data versus the idea of starting? Is it possible to share something?
That would require another meeting.
Yeah, no, everyone is looking at getting some innovative ideas to start their own, I believe.
That would be, that would be another conversation. We can have that.
Great. Sylvia Fernandez asks how difficult it was being a Christian woman in the market then.
I don't think it's any different from being a woman anyways, Christian or otherwise, except the fact that at that point of time when the banker said, okay, Catholics are not known for their business acumen.
Right. Samantha asks, what was the philosophy on launching new products, considering there was so much in competition in the space?
The philosophy of when we found something that wasn't available, wasn't there in the market, is when we could make it. And we did.
All right. Sylvia gives a very nice comment. So proud of you, never to give up attitude, Ms. Cheryl.
Thank you.
Samantha asks another question. For someone starting new in business, what 3 skills, behaviors would be important?
Your attitude, your ability to keep changing and course correcting if required, not holding an ego, be willing to listen to your customer, being open, being a lifelong learner.
Great. James asks a question about how important was advertising for your brands? How did you create brand visibility?
In the beginning, when we were in the retail, it was very, very, very important. But when we moved from retail to the B2B, it was more important that that the customer really liked or found results with our brand.
Great. Ajit Martis asks, very proud to hear your story, Cheryl. The impact on so many stakeholders is amazing. And your response every time to "you can't do this" is my main takeaway for today. That's a nice one.
Thank you, Ajit.
Okay, Michelle asks, what was the biggest challenge, obstacle, and how did you overcome it?
I think, Michelle, at every point there is an obstacle and a challenge. And if you don't learn to find a way to overcome it, you can't go to the next step.
3 more questions. Okay, Lewis asks, would your journey have been different if you had drawn up a business plan at the start? Would you have been less innovative or less experimental?
I definitely would have been less innovative and less experimental.
Great. Ajit asks, how can I, as an early stage entrepreneur with very low resources, focus on the key tasks that need to be done today?
I think establishing a market and listening to your customer and seeing that your customer is happy is the first and most important key task. I think another key task is having your cash flows in place.
Can I ask a question? Just wanted to know, once you had this arrangement of the sale, did you have to remain engaged in the company for a time or?
Yes, 3 years.
Oh, okay. And the non-compete, and then you had to be part of that business.
Yes, yes.
Oh, great. And what is the one thing that kept you going despite hurdles?
My babies.
Oh, wow. That's interesting.
Cheryl, on behalf of Dimensions, I want to thank you for taking up this webinar. And I'm sure that I had a lot of learnings today hearing your story, and I'm sure all those who are present here have a lot of takeaway from your story today. So thank you so much for having shared.
Thank you, Roshni. Thank you for having me here. It's been, I mean, I haven't ever thought about my story and I haven't ever, spoken about it, but thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. It's really been insightful. And all those of you who have taken your time out today to be present here, I really appreciate the fact. We are looking forward to doing many more such things. So your feedback is truly welcome. Cheryl, once again, it's been truly incredible 1 hour going through the journey with you, and we look forward to interacting with you more. By the way, Cheryl did offer to conduct a workshop with some of those, especially women entrepreneurs. If you are interested, she's willing to do a hands-on workshop. That's right, Cheryl?
Yeah.
This is what we are currently trying to do to reach out to our communities and parishes. We've got free webinars available for everybody. And at all topics that you really like, you can please reach out to us and we'll be happy to help you. And in case you're looking at joining Dimensions, we are a networking platform for Christian entrepreneurs, and membership is open to all those seeking to get into business. So thank you, everybody, and I hope to see you again soon.